Reporting on these new results and signals coming out of the primaries, including bruising losses for Trump-endorsed candidates, which shows that more GOP voters are already viewing Trump as an ignorable lame duck.
It's another primary night in America, folks.
Byron Donalds just clinched the Republican nomination.
Keep Florida red.
Jolly decisively pulling off this Democratic nomination.
We are celebrating more than just a primary victory. We are celebrating the return of a resiliency, the renewal of a hope, the belief in each other once again.
A big upset. The Democratic Socialist, Angie Nixon, won her party's nomination.
This is a major victory for the progressive movement.
They look at this movement and they call us extreme. They call us radical. But I think people see through that.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
I won't let them define me, and I know you will always know where I stand.
You heard those references to upsets. You know, primaries can often come down to just the party faithful, and they have often lower turnouts. But this year, we're actually seeing two key trends across several of these primaries. Higher turnout and interest, which Democrats say could build towards a blue wave in November, and voters in both parties rebelling against establishment picks, especially those that are trying to be offered out of Washington. Now, think about this. The political media often covers that point I just referenced and that trend by focusing on leftists and Democratic socialists who are winning some primaries. And they are bucking more establishment candidates, including last night. That's happening. But interestingly, we see a similar trend right now in the GOP primaries, where Trump is now an unpopular establishment figure like a Biden or a Bush when their approvals waned. And voters are starting to reject his endorsed candidates as well. That's what voters did just yesterday. One report noting the GOP spurned Trump's endorsement in two House races, even in Florida, of course, home to Mar-a-Lago. It's where Trump now calls home when he's not at the White House. And that's 6 Trump candidates losing just this month alone. It shows the limits of his influence with sagging approval, even among Republicans, The Hill reports. While Democrats backed a progressive for senator in Florida, a Democratic socialist who you just heard from there, Angie Nixon, which suggests that in some places, Democratic voters are hungry for what they perceive to be new, strong leaders. And this goes beyond just fighting Trump. Because, you know, I always try to keep it real with you. Let's just say few people outside of Florida have been tracking every single candidate in the primary there. But I will remind you or tell you that Nixon actually beat someone who was once the face of standing up to Trump, someone who did risk his career for it. She beat veteran and former star Trump impeachment witness Alexander Vindman. Now, he had the kind of resistance credentials that many Democrats have coveted in past election cycles. But it wasn't enough yesterday. The Post headlining that loss of a key witness from the Trump impeachment days. Other outlets declaring that this sort of era of anti-Trump resistance heroes is over. Mind you, the grassroots interest in fighting Trump is high among Democrats. But handing over the keys just to someone who stood up and was sort of a resistance hero, that might be ending. At least that's how one article notice put it. Meanwhile, former Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who was run out of Congress by his party's right flank, warning Republicans today.
The midterms right now, I'm worried because the generic ballot's over 6. So that's advantage to the Democrats. I'm worried that I'm not seeing the clear message from Republicans. What is the plan of why you should stay in the majority? What is your economic plan going forward? What are you touting as the successes that you've had already? I'm worried about certain states.
You know, he was a Speaker of the House at one point, but he could just as easily have been a diplomat. Because everything he was just saying was, basically, Trump failed, Trump sucks, and Republicans who are trying to avoid that have a problem. I'm just translating it for you. Maybe I'm Kevin McCarthy's Trump anger translator, although it's not a job I'm applying for. But he said it, of course, without trying to further antagonize Trump and the right flank that ran him out of office. But he did say it on Fox News. Presumably, he sees the problem and the failure, and so do a lot of Republican primary voters who I just showed you are often now just rejecting the Trump-endorsed candidates. Now we're going to turn to our midterms outlook to start the show tonight with two guests who know this terrain very well. Politics Station host Reverend Sharpton has actually been hosting top Democrats at his National Action Network convention, really chopping it up and learning where people stand. And two-term New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, who squared off against Trump and worked with then-President Obama on police reform.
This is not a problem simply of Ferguson, Missouri. This is a problem that is national.
The president referred to what each of us feels that gives us a sense of urgency.
You see the two of them there together at the White House. Both men have also run in the Democratic primary for president, looking slightly different in their younger days. Rev looks better, and it's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks. Very diplomatic. You handle that beautifully.
Well, diplomacy seems to be a theme. Mayor, we showed you working at that level because you have been in it. Yeah. What do you see in both the warning signs for Republicans and what I mentioned that I think might be different than some of the D.C. narrative, which is both parties are actually sick of business as usual?
There's no question. First of all, I want to just tell you, Ari, I have been waiting my entire life looking at those Florida results. I've been waiting my entire life to vote for a candidate named Nixon.
Okay.
So I'm happy to say I hope she does great. You know? No, look, I think your thesis is right. I think the reality in Florida, that idea of the resistance hero being yesterday's news, yes, and people don't want to hear anti-Trump. They want to hear, how are you going to fix our reality at the kitchen table? What are you going to do? Bring down the price of gas, of health care, raise wages? You know, Angie Nixon spoke to those issues. A lot of the progressives have been just extraordinarily disciplined about staying on affordability. I think Mamdani did a great job last year setting that tone. So the Democratic establishment in Washington has been trailing behind that reality, finally starting to catch up with the progressives. I think that is a reality. At the same time, there's no question that Trump is losing his own party, not only because folks have felt the effects, right? Republicans and Trump voters seen their gas prices gone up, but also that air of inevitability is gone. A year ago today, if we were talking about Trump, we'd be talking about how much power he had in his own party and he's on a roll with his executive orders. He doesn't have a vision anymore, especially starting with the war. And I think his voters see it too, and they realize this trip is over.
I definitely feel that is correct, because you should not underestimate the fact that Nixon was a state legislator, was working on the ground talking about the issues, and even said, I may disagree with some of the DSA stuff, but I agree with others. Running against a guy who basically had no campaign and basically was playing as a celebrity who stood up to Trump, and he should be given credit for that. But do you put him in the Senate for that? And I think that's what the candidates were saying.